Hello and welcome to another episode of Trip 101 Travel Talk series. I'm Ananya and joining me today is Alissa, all the way from Cuba. Today we're going to talk about this beautiful country where she's been living for more than 6 years, and I'm very excited to get started. So Alissa, before we go ahead and talk about Cuba, please tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you end up living in Cuba?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm actually from Germany and I came to Cuba, I think it was like 8 years ago on holidays with my parents. And I just loved like the energy and everything was so different. And everything was booming because it was around 2015. You know, I'm from Germany. We always have bad weather. And then I came here to study for half a year, like Spanish. And then I stayed longer and longer. And then I ended up here working in tourism. And yeah, that's my story.
So now that you're almost a Cuban now, that you have lived here for more than 8 years, what do you love the most about this country?
Besides the weather, of course, people, how they are. They're very positive. They have so many problems here, but they are so positive. This is what I admire a lot.
So you said you also work in tourism. So what do you do?
I organize city tours in Havana. Actually, all kind of city tours. But my favorite one, which I like personally, is shopping in vintage, where we visit Cuban designers. There are a lot of great designers here that nobody knows about. I go out with tourists at nighttime. I show them the best spots, so no tourist traps, like places where the locals go. And I visit artists. We have art galleries. We have very high quality artists here in Cuba, and I give tours there. But besides that, I do everything like with going around in these famous vintage cars from the 50s, cigar tasting, rum tasting, so everything Cuba-like. I do trip planning, and I've also worked in a big luxury incoming agency, which means I organize group trips on a high level with exclusive dinners and special events with Cuban stars, so kind of event manager, this is something I still do. And yes.
So lots of exciting experiences and activities for people to visit Cuba.
Yeah, a lot to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about what would you suggest as the top 3 or 5 places or spots that everyone who's visiting Cuba should definitely see. Like, what are your personal favorites?
So first of all, Havana, the capital city. It's not just the capital city, it's also the cultural capital city. This is where the most of life happens. So I definitely recommend Havana 5 days. Yes, then you should see Viñales, that's on the west. This is the part where tobacco grows. You see the tobacco fields, a lot of beautiful nature. Then I also like Trinidad. Trinidad, that's a city like in the middle of Cuba. It's a quite small town, an old colonial city. They have cobblestone streets. It's very calm. And yeah, these are my 3 favorite spots. And as well, the seaside, of course, the beaches. So if you are a beach lover, then go to the beach because the water is warm all year long. And you can go to the north coast, which is Varadero or Cayo Coco. They're like small islands with big resort hotels. Or you can go to the south, where there's the Caribbean Sea. Both are very beautiful. I couldn't decide which one is.
So definitely, yeah, as you mentioned, if one is coming from far away, then 2 weeks are necessary to be able to explore at least these 3 towns and some of the popular beaches in Cuba as well.
Definitely. See.
Let's talk about Havana a little bit. You were saying that there are all of these hidden spots that are there within the city as well. So what are some of the things that one should look out for when one is in Havana? Because that is the most popular city that everyone who's coming to Cuba would definitely be in.
The nightlife. I love the nightlife of Havana because it's like when it turns dark, the city is like it would be another city. Because during the day it's very busy, very noisy, and the nights are calmer but also more relaxed. You get away from the day-to-day trouble. Of course, a ride in a vintage car, that's not a secret, of course, but it's a must-do. And also because there you get to know the different areas of Havana. Havana is not just the old town, it's also Vedado, Miramar, in each area, neighborhood has its own charm. And also there you can see the different architectures because we have very different styles from the Art Deco in the 20s to the 50s or even back colonial mansions, a mix of Spanish architecture, sometimes even Italian. And there's a lot of influences. And you will miss them if you only stay in Old Town, which a lot of tourists do. Yeah, and of course, you have to try a Cuban cigar. That's a must.
But what is a good way to sort of have these experiences without like going through the bad experiences? You were saying like there are lots of tourist scams over here. So what should one do when one is visiting?
The best is actually, to hire a guide, a local guide. You can find them. For example, me, you can find on my Instagram account. But I offer my tours on Airbnb Experience. This is also a good way, Airbnb Experience. A lot of locals offer their tours there. Of course, you have to go through it and then decide which offer you like most. I love to follow people on Instagram and then I see over the time, okay, what they do and if it's really what I like. And I think this is a good way to have the best out of the trip.
The best way would be to find the tour guide or locate one of these credible Airbnb experiences and book via them so that you're at least you know that you're in safe hands and you're going to be guided by someone who knows what to do and is not there to con you or scam you in a way.
Exactly. That's the best way.
So what the cars and all the vintage experience that is there to see in Cuba, what's the a good place to get that experience? Is that in Havana itself, old Havana, or does one have to step outside?
So about the cars, you find them actually everywhere. Everywhere on the street, you cannot miss them. They're part of the city. But if you want to do a tour with the car, I also again recommend to book that with a guide. Or if you're very spontaneous, they're also in front of the big hotels in Old Town. There are these cars and you can just go there and talk to them. Of course, the price there is higher than if you book through a tour agent who knows what the real prices are. But still, you can do it spontaneously. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely you need to find some credible source of information. Otherwise, it's easy to either get lost or something that's changed from the time that you found that information as well. Okay. What about Cuban food? I want to know about what dishes should someone who's in Cuba, what should they try?
I like, that's one of the most famous traditional dishes. It's shredded beef in tomato sauce and it comes with rice. Also, they make a lot of things on the grill like barbecue, which is always delicious meat on the barbecue. And for a fish, lobster, of course, they have lobster here. It's an island in the Caribbean. In each dish in Cuba comes always with rice. So you get always rice.
And what's a good place to go and have these traditional Cuban dishes? The Cuban paladres are very famous. That these small restaurants that are present in Cuba. So where should one go to find them, or which ones should one go to?
Wow, there's so many. The most famous paladar is La Guarida because there was a film made in the 80s which was nominated to the Oscars, and this is why it's famous. Of course, it's also one of the most expensive ones, but it has good quality. What I also like is San Cristobal restaurant. This is famous because Barack Obama was there with his family. And it's not that expensive, but still very good quality. Then in Old Town, wow, there are so many. Al Carbon, for example. Or there's one that's my secret tip. It's called Chanchulero, and it's so cheap. You get lobster there, like a real big lobster for only $5 And it's the cheapest I found. And of course, the quality is good, so you don't need to worry there. Yeah, but besides that, there's still so many.
Oh, street food also a thing in Cuba. Like you find some local snacks also on the street.
What is very famous is like a small pizza, like the size of a hand, a bit bigger. It's less than $1, and it's good, but don't expect it to be like a pizza. It's like a different taste because they use different kind of cheese and different kind of ingredients.
So what are the places that locals do go to? What are the popular eating spots for the locals? Is it the paladres?
Yeah, they also go to Paladares. Paladares is also that's just another name for restaurants. So they are normal restaurants. And they were in the past, they were starting like really small. We only had 5 tables because of the policy. But now they are as big as normal restaurants in other places of the world. Now there's no difference anymore.
So, what's a good way to go around to Cuba? Is there like a lot of public transport available, or is it preferable to rent a car and drive around? What's the best way to, if someone's wanting to visit the three cities that you mentioned, from Havana to Viñales to Trinidad? What would be like the mode of transport?
So I would go, if you want to go cheap, there's a bus that connects the cities. Like in America, the Greyhound buses that go from city to city. We have that here too. You can find that online. It's called Via Sul. And the other way is to hire a driver, like a private taxi, of course, and it's more expensive. But you have your own schedule, your own time. Or, yeah, you can rent a car. But sometimes people just prefer to hire a driver because sometimes we have gasoline problems in Cuba. And if you rent a car, you have to care about. And if you hire a driver, that doesn't bother you. And there's no real public transport. Like, there's a train, but I never recommend to use the train because it's so old. It always breaks down. And it's not reliable, especially, and you need to have reliable sources when you are on holidays. So I would go with that bus you find online. It's just one time a day, just the connections, or with a private driver. There's no many options here actually to get around. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, if someone wants to travel on a budget, they definitely do have the option of taking the bus. If
Yes, definitely.
take a cab. Yeah. And for booking cabs, do the usual apps work, or is there like a local app that people can use to book the taxis or the cabs?
No, there's no app for that. But I always recommend to book the transport as soon as like beforehand, not on the same day, because on the same day it's difficult. So book it in advance, that's better. Yeah.
So, what are like good places to stay? Like, if someone's looking for an accommodation within Havana, what would be like a good neighborhood for them to pick so that they're in a touristy neighborhood and they are close to the attractions that they want to see?
So most of the people stay in Old Town Havana because there are a lot of things to do for tourists there. But I always prefer Vedado. This is the area where I live. It's just a 10-minute taxi ride from the Old Town, but it's nicer here because Old Town is very noisy, a bit dirty, and a lot of hustle, and people all the time they beg you for money. And where I live, it's like more quiet. The streets are bigger, big avenues. The houses are also bigger. It's more green, more nature. But here are still like cafes, restaurants, or places to go out at night. And the distance, it's not very far, only 10 minutes. So depends on how people prefer. But you can book accommodations. I always say I prefer the private accommodation instead of the hotels because you get there very often better service, more personalized service, and the prices are the same or even lower. And the private accommodation, they can start very basic ones at, let's say, $25 per night, or of course fancy one for 100, 150, which are like small luxury hotels. So there's something for everybody.
Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense that you're saying that it'll be better if you book a private accommodation, because you do need the help of those locals, your hosts, to guide you a little bit, help you find and navigate your way through Cuba. I think Cuba is one such destination where you need a little bit of that personal attention.
Exactly. Yeah, this is why I always say also hire a guide, or at least for 1 day or 2 days, and then on the first days, the guide, he's gonna do all for you, set up all the plans, and give all the recommendations, and then you are prepared to be by yourself. Or what I sometimes offer, sometimes people don't want to have a guide. Then I offer like online consultations, like trip preparing online, like 1 hour. And then I'm gonna tell them all the things they can do and which they cannot do, which they have to be careful, how to change money, because here you cannot use the credit card in the restaurants, you cannot use it. In Cuba, you can only use cash, but there's a black market for changing money and you have to be careful, and a lot of things you have to be careful about.
Yeah.
And this is why I always help.
Okay. Also, no payments via card or any other way. You always need to have cash on you.
Always, yes.
Okay. And is
Like really, always. So many tourists, they don't inform themselves before they travel. And then they come with $100 for 2 weeks. And then it's, oh no, what do I do?
is dollar like frequently used, or does one need to have the Cuban pesos as well? The currency in use is dollars.
So the most common currency is dollars and euros. You can pay everything in dollars and euros. You don't need to change because everybody accepts dollars or euros, no problem. But especially when you stay a bit longer, I recommend into Cuban peso because there the value is more, like you get more out of the money to make better deals. So it's everything's still more cheaper, yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's a valuable tip that if you're planning to stay for longer, more than a few days, then maybe switch to Cuban pesos to.
Yes. Yeah, to get the better rates, yeah.
Yeah. So, but what are some of the other things that people who are visiting Cuba should know? You have mentioned a little bit about the scams that are there. So, what are some things that someone who's planning to come to Cuba is something that they should keep in mind before they plan or when they get into Cuba?
Yeah. First of all, they have to bring everything they need because here most of the things they know, you cannot have them in Cuba. So you have to bring everything that you need and just be prepared that things can happen. It's very spontaneous here and sometimes plans. There's then a spontaneous blackout or something and then you have to switch plans. So one has to be a bit flexible in Cuba. And also, but this depends on your phone provider. Most of the time you don't have internet here, because foreign SIM cards, most of the time they don't work here. And a lot of people only have connections then in their accommodation with Wi-Fi. This is something that everybody who comes from the outside world, I know in every country, it's no big deal. You have internet everywhere. But in Cuba, think of the year 2000 maybe. And then this is our technical level here.
So, if one wants to have access to internet, or is it better to buy a local SIM while you're there, or
Yes.
or just rely on your accommodations Wi-Fi maybe?
Depends on you. If you're fine to be like only in the Wi-Fi in the morning and in the evening when you're at home, then it's okay. But if you want to be connected all the time, then you buy a local SIM card. Or you talk to your provider if they have special deals with Cuba. But you have to talk that beforehand because of all the restrictions in Cuba could be that it's blocked completely and you have to make sure that beforehand. It's not you buy a local SIM card at the airport. Like you can order it online in advance and then you pick it up at the airport. Or in Havana, in Old Town, there's a shop where you can buy it. But I prefer the airport because in the Old Town, the shop, sometimes there's a big line, then you have to wait and it's easier to buy on the airport. Or sometimes even the private accommodations, they can help. They lend you a SIM card. That's many do offer that, yeah.
Okay. So one thing to definitely keep in mind is to be a little bit patient that internet might not work. And if you are really like someone who's reliant on internet all the time, then make preparations in advance for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a little bit stepping back in time a little bit, like traveling to.
Yes. Definitely. It's like an adventure.
If one is like looking to step away from their heavily connected lives, I think it's a good place to also escape to.
Sure. Of course. Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything safety wise that one should be aware of, or anything in terms of dressing that one should be cautious about while being on the streets?
No. Just be like the usual careful. Don't let your phone unattended. Or the best thing is like to have these security straps for the phone. I have that now too because I got robbed on the streets. Because it's now a bit dangerous sometimes on the streets, but not like more dangerous than in other cities. It's still like Cuba is still the safest country in Latin America, but always be careful and then nothing happens. Or like at nighttime, don't go alone in a dark street. Just the common sense things. There's no extra measurements, no.
Okay, nice. What about language? Is it essential to know a little bit of, is it okay to communicate? Can you get by speaking English, or do you need to know a little bit of Spanish while you're in Cuba?
No. You can get by using English, of course. Not all tourists speak Spanish. Of course, if you can, it's always a plus. But the main things you can always do in English, yeah.
Okay. It's been really great learning about Cuba from you, Alissa, especially because you said that a lot of information online can be misinformation. So learning from a local is definitely, and speaking to you has really been insightful for me. And down to my last question for you, which is, what souvenirs would you recommend a traveler to take back from Cuba?
Oh, wow. What souvenir? Ooh. Cuban cigars, of course. Or what I always recommend is to buy some design, like, I don't know, maybe my earrings. I would like from a Cuban designer. Or I personally like souvenirs that you can use when you're back home and not just put on the shelf and then they're like forever there. Yeah. So this is also like people on my shopping tours, they are always very happy and they buy all this designer stuff or something on the vintage market. I don't know, old vintage, an ashtray, a big one from Cohiba or something like that. Something with value, something with history. Good reminder of Cuba. There are vintage markets. Usually I go with my clients to vintage markets, but only if there are like professional vintage buyers. Then of course we go to all the stores around town.
Okay. What about the cigars? Is there a specific store you can buy them from? Or I'm sure like there are lots of cigars in Cuba. Then how do you distinguish which is the one to take back as your souvenir?
Actually, all cigars and all brands are really good. The brands are Cohiba, Romeo Julieta, Monte Cristo, whatever. Yeah, you're right. The place of buying. Of course, you can buy them at the, let's say, official stores, but then you pay official prices, and that's very high. So you can end up paying like $800 for a box of 25 cigars. Or a local, like your guy or somebody, like I smoke cigars as well, but I never buy a box in $800. So I know the people who work at the factory, and I buy from them at very cheap prices, like really cheap. But of course, you have to know those people and never buy from the street, because this happens a lot to tourists when they walk in Old Town. A lot of people on the street, they want to sell you cigars, change money. Yeah, that's the most common things. Never do that, because you get that's always a scam. Always, like 99% of the cases, it is always a scam.
Okay. Well, it sounds too good to be true. It's a scam.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people fall for the scams, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think for Cuba, definitely, I think more than any other destination about which I've spoken to locals as well as travelers, it stands that you find a local or you find a guide to help you navigate this country, because otherwise it can get challenging.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing all about your beautiful country today, Alissa. It's been really great speaking to you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that our viewers will find all the information that you have shared today really helpful. They can certainly reach out to you to help plan their trips better.
Of course, almost. I also have a newsletter, monthly newsletter, where I talk about all the insider tips. Or I'm bringing out some freebies, packing lists, or how to change money, like this kind of tourist trips. Or they can also book a consultation with me. There are different ways, yeah. But I'm always happy to help, because Cuba is really a great country. But you just have to know a bit how to do things, and then you enjoy it like 100%.
Yeah. So do your research, speak to a local, and only then land up in Cuba. All the exciting experiences are waiting for you, but just make the right choices and find the right places to be.
Exactly. That's the message.
Yes. Okay. So with that, we will sign off for today. Thank you so much for taking out the and speaking to us.
Thank you for inviting me.